The blood-red sun was setting over the endless Wyoming horizon when Catherine Hudson first laid eyes on the rugged stranger who would change her life forever. Dust swirled around his weathered boots as he dismounted his chestnut mare in front of the modest general store she'd been struggling to keep afloat since her husband's passing 6 months prior. It was 1878, and Timber Creek had seen better days just like she had. "Madam," the stranger said, removing his hat to reveal sun-bleached brown hair and eyes the color of a storm-heavy sky, "your sign says you've got supplies and a room to let." Catherine studied him cautiously. Since Thomas's death, she'd learned to be wary of drifters passing through. "The room's $5 a week, meals included. I don't allow drinking or fighting on the premises." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "Won't be a problem. Name's Beau Donovan, Catherine Hudson," she replied, extending her hand formally. When their fingers touched, she felt an unexpected jolt that made her withdraw quickly. "You can settle your horse at the stable next door. I'll show you to your room when you're done." As Beau led his horse away, Catherine pressed a hand against her chest, surprised by her racing heart. At 32, she'd assumed such feelings were long behind her. Thomas had been gone only half a year, and here she was, flustered by a stranger's smile. The shame of it nearly overwhelmed her. The store bell jingled as Beau returned, carrying a worn leather saddle bag. "Ready when you are, Mrs. Hudson." "This way," she said, leading him up the narrow stairs at the back of the store. "It's not much, but it's clean." The small room contained a single bed, a washstand, and a chest of drawers. A window overlooked the dusty main street of Timber Creek. "It's perfect," Beau said, placing his bag on the bed. "Been on the trail for weeks. A real roof and a real bed will feel like the Palmer House in Chicago." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "You've been to Chicago, among other places. I've ridden from Texas to Montana and most places in between." "And what brings you to Timber Creek? We're hardly on the way to anywhere important." Beau turned to face her fully. "I go where the work takes me. Heard the Double R might be hiring hands for the fall roundup." Catherine's expression darkened. "The Double R, Richard Reynolds's spread." "You say that like there's a story behind it." She moved toward the door. "Supper's at 6. Don't be late or you'll go hungry until morning." That night, Catherine served a simple meal of beef stew, cornbread, and coffee. They ate in relative silence at the small table in her kitchen behind the store. The only other boarder, Mr. Peterson, the aging schoolteacher, had already retired for the evening. "This is mighty fine cooking," Beau said, breaking the silence. "Been a while since I've had a home-cooked meal." "Thank you," Catherine replied, surprised by the genuine compliment. "My mother taught me, said a woman should know how to feed her family properly. She was right about that." Beau finished his stew and sat back. "How long have you been in Timber Creek, Mrs. Hudson?" "5 years. My husband and I came west from Illinois after the war. Thomas thought there'd be opportunities here." She stared at her plate. "He was killed in January, riding accident. I'm sorry for your loss." Catherine looked up, expecting to see pity in his eyes, but found only sincere understanding instead. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan." "Beau, please." "Beau," she repeated softly. "And the store, it was your husband's," she nodded. "Yes, I've been trying to keep it going, but it's been challenging. Most folks prefer to do business at the mercantile down the street. The owner, Mr. Wells, has better connections for supplies. And more aggressive pricing, I'd wager." Catherine smiled slightly. "You know something about business." "Enough to recognize when someone's being squeezed out." He took a sip of coffee. "I notice your inventory is running low. The next supply wagon isn't due for 2 weeks. I've been trying to conserve what I have until then. And the cash to restock," Catherine stiffened, "I manage." Beau nodded, not pressing further. "Well, I appreciate the meal and the room. I'll head out to the Double R at first light tomorrow. Just be careful out there," she said, beginning to clear the dishes. "Richard Reynolds isn't known for his fair dealings. The rancher, what's his story?" Catherine hesitated, then sat back down. "He came here 3 years ago with money from back east, started buying up land. Those who wouldn't sell found their water rights mysteriously challenged or their cattle scattered." Her hands trembled slightly. "Thomas stood up to him at a town meeting last December. They argued publicly. A month later, my husband was dead. You think Reynolds had something to do with it?" The sheriff ruled it an accident. Horse spooked, threw Thomas into a ravine. Her eyes met his. "But Thomas was an excellent rider." That horse never spooked at anything. Beau's expression darkened. Has Reynolds bothered you since? He made an offer on the store 2 weeks after the funeral, said it would be better for everyone if I returned east to family. Her chin lifted slightly. I don't have family back east anymore. This store is all I have left. And you're staying? I am. Something passed between them then, a silent understanding that made Catherine look away first. Well, she said, rising, I should finish cleaning up. The morning comes early. Let me help, Beau offered, standing as well. That's not necessary, please, he insisted. My mother would turn in her grave if I let a lady clean up after feeding me. Catherine relented, and they worked side by side in the small kitchen, their arms occasionally brushing as they moved about. Each contact sent a flutter through her that she tried desperately to ignore. Thank you, she said when they finished. Good night, Mr. Donovan. Beau, he reminded her with a smile that reached his eyes. Beau, she whispered after he'd gone upstairs, the name feeling foreign yet somehow right on her lips. The next morning, Catherine woke before dawn, as was her habit. She was surprised to find Beau already in the kitchen, stoking the fire in the stove. Hope you don't mind, he said. Figured I could get the coffee going before heading out. That's thoughtful, she said, tightening the belt of her robe. She was acutely aware of her state of undress with only a nightgown and robe covering her. I usually open the store at 7. I'll be gone by then. He poured water into the coffee pot. But I'd like to stop by when I return from the Double R if that's all right. Of course, you're paying for the room. That's not why I'm asking. His eyes met her steadily. Catherine felt heat rising to her cheeks. I should get dressed. There's bread and preserves if you're hungry. She hurried back to her room, her heart pounding. What was she doing? She was a widow, not some young girl to be flustered by a handsome cowboy. Thomas hadn't been gone a year, and already she was. What? She didn't even know what she was feeling, only that it frightened her. By the time she returned to the kitchen, properly dressed in a simple blue skirt and white blouse, Beau was saddling his horse outside. She watched from the window as he mounted up and rode out of town, his straight back and confident posture stirring something within her that she thought had died with Thomas. The day passed slowly. Only a handful of customers came into the store, and Catherine spent most of her time inventorying her dwindling stock and calculating how much she could afford to order when the supply wagon came. The figures were disheartening. At this rate, she'd be out of business by Christmas. Just before dusk, the bell above the door jingled and Catherine looked up to see Beau enter, his expression grim. You were right about Reynolds, he said without preamble. Man's offering half what the other ranches pay, expects twice the work, and makes it clear anyone who complains won't last long. Did you take the job? No, madam. I've worked for difficult men before, but there's something off about him. Beau leaned against the counter. The foreman, Jackson, seemed decent enough. Said Reynolds has been pushing hard to buy up more land lately. Mentioned your store specifically. Catherine's breath caught. My store? Why would he want this place? It's barely profitable. Location, maybe. It's right at the crossroads. Beau glanced around. Or maybe it's not about the building at all. What do you mean? Some men can't stand being refused. Makes them want something even more. His eyes held hers. Reynolds strike me as that type of man. Catherine thought about Richard Reynolds's cold blue eyes and tight smile at Thomas's funeral, how he'd cornered her afterward with his generous offer. Yes, she said quietly, he is. Then we might have a problem. She raised an eyebrow. Figure I'll stick around Timber Creek for a while. Town seems like it could use another hand. And what will you do for work? Beau smiled. I noticed your storeroom could use some organizing and that back porch is about to collapse. I'm handy with tools. Mr. Donovan, I can barely afford to pay for supplies, let alone hire help. Room and board will do for now, he straightened. Unless you'd rather I move on, Catherine hesitated. Having a man around might discourage Reynolds, but it could also provoke him. And the way Beau looked at her like he could see right through her carefully constructed widow's reserve was unsettling. You can stay, she finally said, but I can't promise the work will last. Fair enough. He touched the brim of his hat. I'll start on that porch tomorrow. True to his word, Beau began repairs the next morning. Catherine watched surreptitiously from the store window as he stripped off his shirt in the warm September sun, revealing a tan torso marked with scars that spoke of a hard life. He worked methodically, replacing rotted boards and reinforcing the structure with a skill that suggested he'd done such work before. By midday, several townspeople had stopped to watch, including Mayor Wilson's wife, who made a point of coming into the store afterward. "My goodness, Catherine," Mrs. Wilson said with a knowing smile, "where did you find such an industrious helper?" "Mr. Donovan is simply a boarder earning his keep," Catherine replied stiffly. "Is that what they're calling it these days?" Mrs. Wilson leaned closer. "I must say it's about time. A woman alone in your position. Well, it's not proper." "I'm still in mourning, Mrs. Wilson. Of course, dear, we all understand. Thomas was a fine man," she patted Catherine's hand. "But life does go on, and Mr. Donovan seems capable." After Mrs. Wilson left, Catherine stood at the counter, gripping its edge until her knuckles turned white. The gossip would spread through town by sundown. What was she thinking, allowing a stranger to stay? Thomas had been respected in Timber Creek. What would people say about his widow now? The bell jingled again, and Catherine looked up to see Sheriff Mills enter, his weathered face unreadable beneath his mustache. "Afternoon, Catherine," he said, removing his hat. "Notice you've got some work being done." "Just repairs, Sheriff, nothing that requires a permit." No, nothing like that." He glanced toward the back of the store. "Just wondering about your new boarder, Donovan, is it?" "Yes, he's staying in the room upstairs for a few weeks." The sheriff fingered the brim of his hat. "Had a visit from Mr. Reynolds this morning." "Seems your boarder made quite an impression out at the Double R yesterday." Catherine's stomach tightened. "Is there a problem?" "Not yet. But Reynolds suggested I check on you, said a widow alone might be vulnerable to unsavory characters." "That's very considerate of Mr. Reynolds," Catherine said coldly. "But as you can see, I'm perfectly fine." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Just the same, might want to be careful who you let get close. Town's seen its share of drifters looking to take advantage." After he left, Catherine went to the back door. Beau was nailing down the last board of the new porch, his movements precise and efficient. "Sheriff Mills was just here," she said. "Asking about you." Beau straightened, wiping sweat from his brow. "Reynolds works fast. This was a mistake." "You're staying here, people are already talking." "People always talk, Catherine. Question is, do you care more about their words or your safety?" "What do you mean?" "Reynolds sent the sheriff to check on me less than a day after I turned down his job offer and asked questions about your husband. That tells me he's worried about something, or he's just a controlling man who can't stand being refused." "Maybe." Beau put on his shirt, buttoning it halfway, "but I've got a feeling there's more to it. Regardless, your presence here is causing gossip. Mrs. Wilson all but implied we were involved." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Would that be so terrible, Mr. Donovan?" Catherine felt heat rising to her cheeks. "My husband has been dead less than a year." The smile disappeared. "I apologize, that was out of line." "Yes, it was." She turned to go back inside, then paused. "The porch looks good, thank you." That evening, they ate dinner in uncomfortable silence, with Mr. Peterson filling the void with stories about his students. Catherine barely touched her food, too aware of Beau across the table, his earlier words echoing in her mind. After Mr. Peterson retired, Beau helped clear the dishes as had become their routine. "I spoke out of turn earlier," he said quietly. "I respect your grief, Catherine." "And your reputation," she nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "But I meant what I said about Reynolds. Something's not right there." He paused in drying a plate. "How well did you know your husband's business dealings?" "Thomas kept the books, but I helped in the store." "Why?" "Did he ever mention any dealings with Reynolds before the town meeting?" Catherine thought for a moment. "Not that I recall. Though he was upset the week before something about a land survey along our south boundary. He went to the county clerk's office in Cheyenne to check the records." "And did he find anything?" "I don't know. He never said, and then the argument with Reynolds happened, and then—" She swallowed hard. "Why are you asking about this?" Beau set down the dishcloth. "Something Jackson said at the ranch about Reynolds being obsessed with water rights lately. Said he's been buying up every piece of land with access to Timber Creek upstream from here." "What would that have to do with our store?" "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." He leaned against the counter. "Where did Thomas keep his papers?" "In the desk in my bedroom." Catherine hesitated. "You think there's something in them?" "Won't know until we look." The intimacy of allowing this man into her bedroom wasn't lost on Catherine, but curiosity and something else she couldn't name compelled her to nod. "I'll get them." She returned with a wooden box filled with documents, deeds, receipts, letters, and ledgers. They spread them across the kitchen table, sorting through years of Thomas's meticulous record-keeping. "Here's the deed to the store," Catherine said, holding up a yellow document. "And this is for our homestead claim outside town." Beau studied the deed carefully. "This property extends all the way to Timber Creek." "Yes, there's about 15 acres behind the store that runs down to the creek. Thomas thought we might expand someday, maybe build a proper house instead of living above the store." "May I see the map?" Catherine found the survey map in the box. Beau laid it flat, his finger tracing the property lines. "This creek feeds into the main branch that runs through Reynolds's land, doesn't it?" "I believe so." "Why? Water rights in Wyoming territory follow prior appropriation, first in time, first in right. When was this property purchased?" 1873. "Thomas bought it from old Mr. Harrington, who'd homesteaded it in the 1850s. "And Reynolds came 3 years ago, you said?" Beau's eyes narrowed. "I'd wager your water rights predate his, which means if there's ever a dispute over water usage, your claim would take precedence." Catherine's eyes widened. "You think that's why he wants our property, for the water rights? It makes sense. This area's been in drought for 2 years. Ranchers are desperate for water access." Beau shuffled through more papers. "Did Thomas ever file a formal water claim with the territorial office?" "I don't know." "What would it look like?" They continued searching until Catherine pulled out an envelope from the territorial government. Inside was a document confirming water rights to Timber Creek dating back to Harrington's original claim in 1859. "This is it," Beau said, reading through the document. "According to this, your property has senior rights to over 1,000 acre-feet of water annually from Timber Creek." "Is that a lot?" "Enough to water several thousand head of cattle through a drought." He looked up at her. "Catherine, this claim is probably worth more than everything else you own combined. But why would Thomas never mention this? Maybe he didn't realize its value, or maybe—" Beau's expression darkened. "Maybe he figured it out right before he died." The implication hung heavy in the air. "You think Reynolds—" Catherine couldn't finish the sentence. "I think we need to be very careful." Beau gathered the papers. "We should keep these somewhere safe, not here. Why not?" "Because if Reynolds is willing to kill for these rights, he won't hesitate to search for the documentation." His eyes met hers. "And I don't want you here alone if that happens." Fear and anger warred within Catherine. "This is my home. I won't be driven out by suspicion and fear." "I'm not suggesting you leave permanently, just maybe stay with someone in town for a few days while I look into this further." "No." Her voice was firm. "Thomas died protecting what was ours. I won't dishonor his memory by running at the first sign of trouble." Beau studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but we'll need to be careful, and we should make copies of these documents, hide them separately." "I can do that. Mr. Peterson has a copying press for school documents." "Good, and Catherine—" He hesitated. "I think we should keep this between us for now, not even the sheriff." "You don't trust Sheriff Mills?" "I don't know who's in Reynolds's pocket in this town. Better safe than sorry." That night, Catherine lay awake in bed, her mind racing. If Beau was right, Reynolds had been after their water rights all along. Had Thomas discovered this? Had he confronted Reynolds about it before the town meeting? And had it cost him his life? The thought that Thomas's death might not have been an accident opened wounds she thought had begun to heal. Grief mingled with rage, keeping sleep at bay, and beneath it all was confusion about Beau Donovan. Who was this man who'd ridden into her life so unexpectedly? Why was he so willing to help her, and why did her heart race every time his eyes met hers? Just after midnight, a crash from downstairs jolted Catherine fully awake. She grabbed Thomas's old revolver from the bedside drawer and crept to her bedroom door. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Beau, who was moving silently toward the stairs, his own pistol drawn. "Stay here," he whispered. "It's my store," she whispered back, gripping the revolver tighter. Their eyes met in the darkness, and after a moment he nodded. "Stay behind me." They descended the stairs slowly, Beau leading the way. The store was dark except for moonlight streaming through the front windows. Nothing seemed disturbed until they reached the back room where Catherine had left the box of documents on her desk. The window was broken, glass scattered across the floor, and the desk had been ransacked. "The box was gone, damn," Beau muttered, holstering his weapon. They moved faster than I expected. Catherine surveyed the damage, her heart sinking. All of Thomas's papers. Not all, Beau said. He reached into his shirt and pulled out the water rights document. I kept the most important one, and we still have the copies we made with Peterson's press. Relief flooded through her. Thank God. We should check the rest of the store, make sure nothing else was taken. They found no other damage or missing items, suggesting the thieves had known exactly what they were after. Reynolds won't be happy when he realizes the water rights document isn't among the papers, Beau said as they secured the broken window with a board. He'll be back. Let him come, Catherine said, anger replacing fear. This was my husband's legacy. I won't let it be stolen. We'll need proof it was Reynolds behind this. How do we get that? Beau considered for a moment. I think it's time I paid another visit to the Double R. Jackson seemed uncomfortable with some of Reynolds's methods. He might be willing to talk. That could be dangerous, worth the risk. Beau's eyes softened as he looked at her. You should try to get some sleep. I'll keep watch down here for the rest of the night. I can take turns, Catherine, he interrupted gently. You look exhausted. Rest, I'll be fine. Too tired to argue, she nodded. Wake me at dawn. I want to report this to Sheriff Mills first thing. Of course. As she turned to go upstairs, she hesitated. Beau, thank you for being here. For helping. In the moonlight, his smile was warm. Get some rest, Catherine. The next morning, Sheriff Mills surveyed the damage with a practiced eye. Definitely a break-in. Any idea what they were after? Some of my husband's business papers, Catherine said, watching the sheriff carefully. Nothing of great value to anyone but me. Sentimental items then? Yes, family records mostly. The sheriff made notes in a small book. Strange they'd target papers. Usually thieves go for cash or goods they can sell. Perhaps it wasn't ordinary thieves, Beau suggested from where he leaned against the counter. Sheriff Mills's eyes narrowed. Meaning, just that it seems targeted, like someone knew exactly what they wanted. And who might that be, Mr. Donovan? I couldn't say, Sheriff. I'm new in town. The tension between the two men was palpable. Catherine intervened. Sheriff, will you be able to investigate this? I'll ask around, see if anyone noticed anything suspicious last night. Mills closed his notebook. But with no witnesses and nothing of obvious value taken, there's not much to go on. After the sheriff left, Catherine turned to Beau. He didn't seem very concerned. No, he didn't. Beau's expression was grim. I'm more convinced than ever that Reynolds has influence with the law here. What do we do now? I still think talking to Jackson is our best lead. I'll ride out to the Double R today, and if Reynolds is there, then I'll have to be persuasive about why I've changed my mind about working for him. Beau touched her arm lightly. Will you be all right here alone? The concern in his eyes made something flutter in Catherine's chest. I'll be fine. Mrs. Wilson has invited me for tea this afternoon anyway, probably wants to interrogate me about you. Beau's laugh was unexpected and warm. What will you tell her? That you're a mysterious drifter with questionable intentions, she replied, surprising herself with the teasing tone. Only half right, he said with a smile. My intentions are quite clear, at least to me. Before she could respond, the store bell jingled as their first customer of the day entered. Catherine busied herself with work, but Beau's words stayed with her throughout the morning. By early afternoon, Catherine had closed the store for her tea with Mrs. Wilson. As she fastened her bonnet, Beau appeared from the storeroom where he'd been repairing shelves. I'm heading to the Double R, he said. Should be back by evening. Be careful, she replied, suddenly anxious. Reynolds is dangerous. I've handled dangerous men before. He hesitated, then stepped closer. Catherine, if I'm not back by nightfall, you will be, she interrupted firmly. But if I'm not, he continued, take the water rights document and go to Cheyenne. Find Judge Parker at the Territorial Courthouse. He's an honest man who will help you file a formal complaint. You're scaring me, Beau. Just being cautious. His hand came up as if to touch her face, then dropped. Enjoy your tea with Mrs. Wilson. Try not to confirm too many rumors about us. Despite her anxiety, Catherine smiled. I'll do my best, though she's quite determined to marry me off again. Can't say I blame her, Beau replied softly. Their eyes held for a moment before he turned away. I'll see you tonight. As Catherine walked to the Wilson home, her thoughts were in turmoil. In just a few days, Beau Donovan had upended her carefully ordered life. She'd gone from quietly grieving widow to a woman embroiled in dangerous speculation about her husband's death. And worse, she was developing feelings for a man she barely knew, feelings that both excited and terrified her, Mrs. Wilson's tea turned out to include half a dozen of Timber Creek's most prominent ladies, all of whom seemed inordinately interested in Catherine's boarder. "Such a handsome man," Mrs. Perkins commented over her teacup, "and so skilled with his hands from what I've observed." The innuendo wasn't lost on anyone, and Catherine felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Donovan has been very helpful with repairs to the store, nothing more." "Of course, dear," Mrs. Wilson said with a knowing smile. "But you must admit, it's providential that such a capable man arrived just when you needed help." "Providence has little to do with it," Catherine replied. "He was passing through looking for work." "At the Double R, I heard," Mrs. Perkins said. Though Richard Reynolds mentioned at church that the man seemed untrustworthy, Catherine stiffened. "Mr. Reynolds hardly knows Mr. Donovan. Still, a woman alone must be careful," Mrs. Wilson said. "Perhaps you should consider Mr. Reynolds's offer for the store. He mentioned just yesterday he was still interested." "Did he?" Catherine set down her cup with deliberate care. "How fortunate for me." The conversation moved on to other town gossip, but Catherine's mind remained fixed on the connection between Reynolds and the ladies present. Most of them were wives of men who did business with the Double R. If Reynolds wanted to spread rumors about Beau, he had the perfect network to do so. As she walked home later, Catherine spotted Sheriff Mills outside the telegraph office. He nodded to her but seemed preoccupied. Inside the store, she found a note from Mr. Peterson saying he'd gone to visit his sister in the next town and would return in a few days. The store felt eerily empty without Beau's presence. Catherine busied herself with inventory, trying not to watch the clock or worry about what might be happening at the Double R. As dusk approached with no sign of Beau, her anxiety grew. Just as she was closing up, the store bell jingled. Catherine turned, hoping to see Beau, but instead found Richard Reynolds standing in the doorway, his expensive coat and polished boots a stark contrast to the modest surroundings. "Mrs. Hudson," he said with a tight smile, "I hope I'm not intruding." "We're closed, Mr. Reynolds," Catherine replied coolly. "If you need supplies, you'll have to return tomorrow. Actually, I came to speak with you about a matter of some importance." He stepped further into the store, removing his hat. "May we speak privately?" Every instinct warned Catherine against being alone with this man, but curiosity and a desire to confront him won out. "What about your future, Mrs. Hudson, and the future of Timber Creek?" He gestured to the back room. "Shall we?" Reluctantly, Catherine led him to the small office where she'd been sorting inventory. The broken window had been temporarily repaired with a board, but the room still bore signs of the previous night's intrusion. "I heard about your break-in," Reynolds said, his eyes lingering on the boarded window. "Distressing business. Sheriff Mills mentioned some papers were taken." "Yes, family documents primarily. I see." Reynolds didn't sound convinced. "Mrs. Hudson, I'll be direct. I'm here to renew my offer for your property. I'm prepared to be quite generous, say, twice what I offered after your husband's unfortunate accident." Catherine's pulse quickened. "Why the sudden increase, Mr. Reynolds? The store hasn't become more profitable in the last 6 months." "Let's just say I've developed new interests in this part of town." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "It would be a considerable sum, enough for you to return east and live quite comfortably." "I have no desire to return east, Mr. Reynolds. This is my home." "A woman alone faces many challenges in a place like this." His tone hardened slightly. As recent events have shown, the threat wasn't subtle. Catherine straightened. "Are you implying you had something to do with the break-in, Mr. Reynolds?" "Of course not." He looked affronted. "I'm merely pointing out the dangers, especially when one associates with questionable characters." "If you mean Mr. Donovan, I mean precisely Mr. Donovan." Reynolds's face darkened. "Do you know anything about the man you've welcomed into your home, Mrs. Hudson, his past, his reputation?" "I know he's been helpful and honorable in his dealings with me." Reynolds laughed without humor. "Honorable? The man is a gunfighter, Mrs. Hudson. He's wanted in Colorado for killing a man in a saloon brawl. Is that the sort of help you're looking for?" Catherine struggled to maintain her composure. "I find it hard to believe someone with such a past would openly seek work at your ranch. Perhaps he had other motives." Reynolds stepped closer. Perhaps he's more interested in what you possess than in honest work. And what exactly do you think I possess that would interest such a man, Mr. Reynolds? The same thing that interests me. His eyes bored into hers. Water rights to Timber Creek that predate every other claim in the county. So Beau had been right. Catherine felt a chill despite the warm evening. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Reynolds's voice was cold. Your husband certainly did. He discovered the value of those rights just before his accident. Fury rose in Catherine, burning away her fear. Did you kill my husband, Mr. Reynolds? He looked genuinely startled by her directness. Mrs. Hudson, that's a serious accusation, one that could have serious consequences for someone without proof. Is that why you broke in last night, looking for proof? She stepped toward him, emboldened by anger. You won't find it. Thomas was smarter than you gave him credit for. Reynolds's expression hardened. I came here to make you a generous offer. I suggest you reconsider before things become unpleasant. Get out of my store, Mr. Reynolds. And don't come back unless you're prepared to answer for what happened to my husband. For a moment, Catherine thought he might strike her. Instead, he placed his hat back on his head with deliberate slowness. You're making a grave mistake, Mrs. Hudson. Your friend Donovan won't be coming to your rescue. He had an unfortunate accident at the Double R this afternoon. Catherine's heart seemed to stop. What have you done? Nothing that wasn't necessary. Reynolds moved toward the door. My offer stands until tomorrow noon. After that, I can't be responsible for what happens. After he left, Catherine sank into a chair, her legs trembling. Beau had been right about everything the water rights, Reynolds's desperation to acquire them, even Thomas's death. And now Reynolds claimed Beau had met with an accident as well. No, she refused to believe it. Beau was too smart, too careful to be caught unawares. He'd promised to return, and despite knowing him for only a few days, Catherine trusted that promise more than Reynolds's threats. But as the hours passed with no sign of Beau, doubt began to creep in. What if Reynolds was telling the truth? What if Beau was lying injured somewhere or worse? She paced the store, jumping at every sound, her hand never far from Thomas's revolver. Just before midnight, a soft knocking came at the back door. Catherine approached cautiously, gun raised. Who's there? She called. It's me, came Beau's voice, strained and hoarse. She unlocked the door with trembling hands. Beau stumbled in, his face bruised and bloody, one arm held protectively against his ribs. Catherine caught him as he sagged against the doorframe. My God, what happened? She gasped, helping him to a chair. Reynolds's men, he managed through split lips. They were waiting when I tried to talk to Jackson. Let me get some water and bandages. She hurried to gather supplies, returning to find Beau trying to remove his torn shirt. Here, let me help. Gently, she eased the fabric away from his bloodied torso. Beneath the dirt and blood, his chest was a mass of bruises. Are your ribs broken? Don't think so, just bruised. He winced as she began cleaning his wounds. They were thorough but careful, wanted information, not a body to explain. Information about what? The water rights document. Reynolds knows it wasn't among the papers stolen last night. His eyes met hers. I didn't tell them anything, Catherine. She continued tending his wounds, anger building with each new bruise she discovered. Reynolds was here earlier. He threatened me, told me you'd had an accident and wouldn't be coming back. Hoped that would scare you into selling, did he? Despite his injuries, Beau's eyes were alert. What else did he say? He admitted to knowing about the water rights. And he as good as confessed to being involved in Thomas's death. Her hands trembled as she wrapped a bandage around his ribs. He's given me until noon tomorrow to accept his offer, and if you refuse, he said he couldn't be responsible for what happens. She finished bandaging him and sat back. What are we going to do, Beau? We need to get you and that document to Cheyenne. He tried to stand but grimaced in pain. Tonight, if possible. You're in no condition to travel, doesn't matter. Reynolds won't wait until noon tomorrow. Once his men report back that they couldn't get information from me, he'll make his move. Catherine considered their options. We could ask Sheriff Mills for help. Can't trust him. He was at the Double R today, talking with Reynolds before I arrived. Beau shook his head. We're on our own, Catherine. The reality of their situation settled over her. All right, we'll leave tonight. But first, let me make you something to eat and prepare some supplies. While Catherine gathered food and necessities, Beau cleaned his revolver and checked his ammunition. Despite his injuries, his hands were steady, his movements precise. Catherine realized this wasn't the first time he'd prepared for danger. "Reynolds said you were wanted in Colorado," she said as she packed a small bag, "for killing a man in a saloon." Beau's hands stilled. Did he now? "Is it true?" he sighed, resuming his work. "Partly. There was a fight in Leadville 2 years ago. Man pulled a knife on a friend of mine. I intervened. He died." His eyes met hers steadily. "I was cleared of any wrongdoing, self-defense. Why didn't you tell me?" "It's not something I'm proud of, Catherine, and it's not the first impression I wanted to make." He holstered his weapon. "I've done things I regret, been places I shouldn't, but I've never killed a man who didn't try to kill me first." Something in his tone convinced Catherine more than his words. "I believe you." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Thank you for that." By 1 in the morning, they were ready to depart. Catherine had written a note for Mr. Peterson explaining her sudden absence, packed enough supplies for several days, and secured the water rights document inside her bodice. Beau had recovered enough to move with only slight stiffness, though pain still shadowed his eyes. "We'll take the back roads," he said as they prepared to leave. "Stay off the main trail to Cheyenne. It'll take longer but be safer." Catherine took one last look around the store that had been her home for the past 5 years. "Will I ever see this place again?" "If I have anything to say about it," Beau replied, his voice firm. They slipped out the back door into the moonlit night. Beau had saddled both his horse and Thomas's old mare, which Catherine had kept but rarely ridden since his death. They mounted up and headed south, away from town, keeping to the shadows whenever possible. For the first few hours they rode in silence, both alert for any sign of pursuit. Catherine found the rhythm of riding coming back to her easily, though her thoughts were in turmoil. In the space of a day, her life had completely unraveled. She was fleeing her home in the dead of night with a man she barely knew but somehow trusted with her life. As dawn broke over the eastern hills, they stopped to rest the horses by a small stream. Beau dismounted with a barely suppressed groan, his injuries clearly paining him. "We should be safe to stop for a while," he said, helping Catherine down. "No sign of pursuit so far." "How far to Cheyenne?" she asked, stretching her stiff legs. 2 days if we keep to the back trails. Might be able to reach the railroad at Laramie by nightfall tomorrow if we push hard." Catherine studied his face in the growing light. The bruises had darkened, and exhaustion lined his features. "You need rest, Beau, we both do. We'll rest when we're safe." But he sat heavily on a fallen log, betraying his fatigue. Catherine retrieved some bread and jerky from their provisions. As they ate in silence, the enormity of what they were doing settled over her. She was leaving behind everything she'd known, everything she and Thomas had built together. "I never thought it would come to this," she said quietly, "running from my own home." "You're not running, Catherine, you're fighting just in a different way, by fleeing in the night, by seeking justice." Beau's eyes were intense despite his exhaustion. "Reynolds took your husband from you. He tried to steal your livelihood. He thinks his money and power put him above the law. Proving him wrong isn't running, it's standing your ground." His words stirred something in Catherine, a resolve that had been buried beneath months of grief and struggle. "You're right. Thomas would want me to fight." "He would." Beau hesitated. "From everything you've told me about him, he was a good man." "He was." Catherine looked away, unexpectedly emotional. "Honest, kind, determined to build something that would last." "He succeeded." When she looked back, Beau's expression was gentle. "You're his legacy, Catherine, your strength, your refusal to be intimidated." Their eyes held for a long moment. Catherine felt a connection forming between them that went beyond their shared danger, a recognition of something fundamental in each other. The moment was broken by the distant sound of hoofbeats. Beau was on his feet instantly, hand on his revolver. "Mount up," he said tersely, quietly. They were in the saddle and moving again within minutes, veering away from their planned route and deeper into the rugged country south of Timber Creek. The sound of pursuit faded, but Beau maintained a brisk pace, constantly scanning their surroundings. "Reynolds must have men watching the trails," he said as they picked their way through a rocky ravine. "We'll need to be more careful." They rode through the day, stopping only when necessary to rest the horses. By late afternoon, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain. Beau studied the sky with concern. "Storm's coming. We need to find shelter." "There's an old line shack about 2 miles east," Catherine said. Thomas and I stayed there once when we were caught in a downpour returning from Cheyenne. You know the way, I think so. The first raindrops were falling as they located the small, weathered cabin nestled among a stand of pines. It was a single room with a stone fireplace, rough wooden bunks, and a small table but solid and dry. Beau tended to the horses while Catherine gathered firewood from the stack against the cabin wall. By the time they were settled inside, rain was drumming steadily on the roof, and lightning flashed across the darkened sky. "Storm's a blessing and a curse," Beau said as he built a small fire. "Washes away our tracks but slows our progress, and makes it harder for anyone to follow us," Catherine added, unpacking some of their provisions. "That too." He straightened from the fire, wincing slightly. "We should be safe here for the night." As the cabin warmed, they shared a simple meal of jerky, hard bread, and coffee brewed over the fire. The intimacy of their situation wasn't lost on Catherine alone in a remote cabin with a man who was still largely a stranger. Yet she felt no fear, only a growing awareness of him as a man, not just a protector. "Tell me about yourself, Beau," she said as they sat before the fire. "The truth this time," he smiled slightly. "What makes you think I haven't been truthful? You've told me facts, not truths." "There's a difference." Beau was silent for a long moment, staring into the flames. "I grew up in Texas. My father was a rancher until the war took everything. He died at Shiloh. Mother held on as long as she could, but without him." He shrugged. "I was 16 when she passed. Been on my own since. No other family, a sister in San Francisco, married well, we write occasionally." His eyes remained on the fire. "Spent some time with the Rangers after the war, then drifted. Worked ranches from Texas to Montana, did some scouting for the Army. Tried prospecting in Colorado. And the incident in Leadville happened like I said. Man pulled a knife on a friend over a card game. I stepped in." His voice was matter of fact. "Wasn't the first time I'd been in a fight, probably won't be the last." "Have you killed other men?" The question slipped out before she could reconsider. Beau's gaze finally met hers. "Yes, during the war, after when I had no choice." His expression was unreadable. "Does that frighten you?" "It should," Catherine admitted, "but it doesn't, not anymore." "Why not?" "Because I've seen what kind of man you are when it matters." She held his gaze steadily. "You could have ridden on when Reynolds's men attacked you, could have left me to face him alone, but you didn't." "Couldn't," he corrected quietly. The word hung between them, laden with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. Catherine broke eye contact first, suddenly aware of the heat in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fire. "We should get some rest," she said, rising. "We have a long ride tomorrow." There were 2 narrow bunks built into the wall of the cabin. Catherine took one and Beau the other, though she noticed he positioned himself between her and the door, his revolver within easy reach. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Catherine. The storm raged outside, rain lashing against the small window and thunder rolling across the hills. But it wasn't just the weather keeping her awake. Her mind raced with thoughts of Thomas, of Reynolds, of the uncertain future that awaited her in Cheyenne. And of Beau, sleeping just a few feet away, a man who had upended her carefully constructed world in less than a week. She found herself comparing him to Thomas, not in a way that diminished her late husband's memory, but in a way that highlighted how different the 2 men were. Thomas had been steady, predictable, kind in a quiet way. Beau was intensity wrapped in calm, danger held in check by honor, a storm contained within a man, and she was drawn to him in a way that both exhilarated and terrified her. "You should sleep," came his voice from the darkness, startling her. "Need your strength tomorrow." "I know," she whispered. "I'm trying." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the storm outside. "Then, what are you thinking about?" Catherine hesitated. "Everything, nothing." "How quickly life can change. Regrets?" "No," she answered truthfully, "just uncertainty." Another silence. "Catherine, yes. Whatever happens in Cheyenne, whatever you decide after, I want you to know that meeting you." He paused. "It's changed things for me too." Her heart quickened. "How?" Made me think about stopping, finding a place, building something instead of just passing through. The implication hung in the air between them. Catherine found herself holding her breath, waiting for words that didn't come. Eventually, she heard his breathing deepen as he drifted to sleep. She lay awake much longer, wondering what kind of future might be possible once this danger had passed, and whether she was ready to imagine such a future with Beau Donovan in it. Morning brought clear skies and renewed determination. They set out at dawn, Beau estimating they could reach the railroad at Laramie by nightfall if they pushed hard and avoided the main trails. As they rode, Catherine found herself studying Beau's profile against the brightening sky. His features were sharper in daylight, the lines around his eyes speaking of both laughter and hardship. The bruises from his beating had darkened, but he rode as if oblivious to the pain, alert and watchful. "What will you do?" she asked as they paused to water the horses at a stream. "After Cheyenne, I mean." Beau glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Depends on what happens there and on other things." "What other things?" Instead of answering, he said, "What will you do if we succeed in proving Reynolds's guilt?" "I hadn't thought that far ahead." Catherine considered. "Return to Timber Creek, I suppose, rebuild the store, continue what Thomas and I started." Alone, the question hung between them, weighted with unspoken possibilities. Before Catherine could respond, Beau stiffened, his gaze fixing on something in the distance. "Riders," he said tersely, "3 of them coming fast from the west." Catherine squinted in the direction he was looking. "Reynolds's men, can't tell yet, but we shouldn't wait to find out." He mounted quickly. "Come on, there's a stand of trees to the east, we can lose them there." They rode hard, pushing their mounts as fast as the rough terrain would allow. Catherine glanced back to see the riders gaining ground, their horses fresher and their path more direct. "They're catching up," she called to Beau. "Just a little further," he replied, leading them toward a dense copse of pines ahead. They reached the trees and dismounted, Beau pulling both horses deeper into the cover. "Stay low," he whispered, drawing his revolver. "If they come in after us, we'll have the advantage in this terrain." Catherine nodded, her heart pounding. She withdrew Thomas's revolver from her saddlebag, checking that it was loaded. Beau raised an eyebrow but nodded approvingly. The riders slowed as they approached the tree line, clearly wary of an ambush. Through the branches, Catherine recognized one of them as Sheriff Mills. The other 2 were strangers, but the way they carried themselves alert, hands near their weapons, marked them as experienced gunmen. "Donovan," the sheriff called, "I know you're in there. Come out peaceful-like and no one gets hurt." Beau remained silent, moving slightly to get a better position. Catherine stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. "Mrs. Hudson," Mills tried again. "Madam, I'm here to help you. This man's dangerous. He's wanted for questioning in a murder back in Colorado." "That's a lie, Catherine," Beau whispered. "Reynolds has gotten to him." "I know," she whispered back. "What do we do? Wait them out. They won't risk coming in blind," but the sheriff had other ideas. "I'm sending Johnson and Taylor around the other side," he called. "You've got nowhere to go, Donovan. Make it easy on yourself and the lady." Beau cursed under his breath as the 2 gunmen split off, circling the grove to cut off their escape. "We need to move," he said urgently. "They'll have us surrounded in minutes." "Where?" Catherine asked, panic rising in her throat. "Deeper in, then east toward that ridge." He pointed to a rocky outcropping visible through the trees. "If we can reach higher ground, we'll have a better chance." They moved as quietly as possible, leading the horses through the underbrush. Behind them, Catherine could hear the men crashing through the trees, calling to each other as they searched. They had almost reached the eastern edge of the grove when a shout went up. "There they are." A shot rang out, splintering bark from a tree near Catherine's head. Beau pushed her down, returning fire over a fallen log. "Get to the horses," he ordered. "Ride for the ridge, don't wait for me." "I won't leave you," she protested. Catherine, his eyes locked with hers, intense and unwavering. "Trust me, get to the ridge, I'll be right behind you." Another shot, closer this time. Catherine scrambled to her feet, reaching the horses and mounting quickly. She looked back to see Beau fire twice more, forcing their pursuers to take cover. "Go," he shouted, backing toward his own horse. Catherine hesitated only a moment before urging her mare forward, breaking from the cover of the trees toward the open ground leading to the ridge. Behind her, more shots were fired, followed by Beau's answering volley. She rode hard, not daring to look back until she'd reached the base of the ridge. When she did, her heart nearly stopped. Beau was galloping toward her, but one of the gunmen had emerged from the trees and was taking careful aim. "Beau!" She screamed, raising Thomas's revolver and firing without thinking. The distance was too great for accuracy, but the shot was enough to make the gunman duck for cover. His own shot going wide, Beau reached her side, breathing hard. "Nice shooting," he gasped. but we're not safe yet. Up the ridge, there's a trail. They rode upward along a narrow path that wound through tumbled boulders and scrub pine. Below, the sheriff and his men were remounting, preparing to follow. They'll be more cautious now, Beau said as they reached a level area halfway up the ridge. But we need to find better cover. The ridge provided a commanding view of the surrounding countryside. To the east, Catherine could make out a thin line of smoke, perhaps a ranch or camp. To the south, the land stretched toward Laramie, still miles away. There, Beau pointed to a deep ravine cutting through the far side of the ridge. We can follow that down and cut east, might throw them off our trail. They had just started toward the ravine when more riders appeared in the distance, at least 6 of them, coming from the direction of Timber Creek. Reynolds must have sent every hired gun he could find, Beau muttered. Catherine felt despair threatening to overwhelm her. We're trapped. Beau studied their surroundings with a tactician's eye. Not yet. There's a cave system in these ridges. Used to be a hideout for outlaws during the war, if we can find one of the entrances. They dismounted and led the horses along the ridgeline, searching for any opening in the rock face. The sounds of pursuit grew closer, both groups of riders converging on their position. There, Catherine spotted a dark opening partially hidden by brush. Could that be it? Beau investigated quickly. It's deep enough, might lead somewhere. He helped Catherine dismount. We'll have to leave the horses, slap their rumps and send them running south. Might buy us some time. With heavy hearts, they removed their essential supplies from the saddlebags. Catherine stroked her mare's nose. Thank you, girl, she whispered before Beau slapped both horses, sending them galloping down the ridge. They ducked into the cave just as the first riders crested the ridge. The opening narrowed quickly, forcing them to crouch and feel their way forward in the dimness. I hope you know where you're going, Catherine whispered as the passage twisted deeper into the earth. Not exactly, Beau admitted. But these caves were used by both sides during the war. There should be multiple exits. They moved cautiously, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. The passage widened into a larger chamber, where a faint light filtered through a crack in the ceiling, providing just enough illumination to see. We should rest, Beau said, setting down their packs. Catch our breath before continuing. Catherine sank gratefully onto a flat rock, her legs trembling with exertion and fear. Will they follow us in here? Some might, but these caves are a maze, easy to get lost if you don't know your way. He checked his revolver, counting his remaining bullets. How's your ammunition? 3 shots left, she replied, checking Thomas's gun. Beau nodded grimly. We'll have to make them count if it comes to that. They sat in silence for a while, listening for any sounds of pursuit. Eventually, Catherine spoke. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. Running for my life, hiding in caves. Not the usual life of a storekeeper's widow, Beau agreed with a small smile. No, she looked at him in the dim light. But then you're not the usual passing cowboy. Never claimed to be. His eyes held hers. Catherine, if we don't make it out of this, we will, she interrupted firmly. But if we don't, he continued, I want you to know something. The past few days, meeting you, it's meant something to me, more than I expected. Catherine's heart quickened. It's meant something to me too, Beau. He moved closer, his hand finding hers in the semi-darkness. When this is over, if we get through this, I'd like to stay in Timber Creek with you. The simple declaration hung in the air between them, profound in its directness. Catherine felt tears pricking her eyes. I'd like that too, she whispered. Their eyes held for a long moment. Then, slowly, Beau leaned forward. Their lips met in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened, years of loneliness and longing channeled into this one perfect moment of connection. When they finally parted, Catherine's cheeks were wet with tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Beau wiped them away gently with his thumb. We should move on, he said softly. Find a way out of here. They gathered their supplies and continued deeper into the cave system, hands linked in the darkness. The passage twisted and turned, sometimes narrowing so much they had to squeeze through sideways. After what seemed like hours, they saw light ahead, daylight filtering through an opening. Beau approached cautiously, checking for any sign of their pursuers before motioning Catherine forward. The exit emerged high on the eastern side of the ridge, overlooking a broad valley. No sign of them, he said, scanning the landscape. They must still be searching the western slopes. "Where are we?" Catherine asked, trying to get her bearings. "About 5 miles east of where we entered, I'd guess." Beau pointed south. "Laramie's still a good day's ride, but without horses. We'll have to walk," Catherine finished, "unless." "Unless what?" She pointed to the thin line of smoke they'd spotted earlier, now more visible to the east. "If that's a ranch or homestead, maybe we could get help," Beau considered. "Risky, could be friends of Reynolds, or just decent people who might lend us horses." She met his gaze steadily. "We have to try, Beau. We'll never make it to Cheyenne on foot before Reynolds catches up to us." After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "All right, but we approach carefully. At the first sign of trouble, we disappear back into the hills." They made their way down the eastern slope, keeping to cover whenever possible. The journey was slow and arduous, the terrain rough and their bodies weary from the day's exertions. As dusk approached, they came within sight of the source of the smoke, a small homestead nestled in a protected valley. A modest cabin stood beside a barn and corral with a few acres of cultivated land surrounding it. "Looks peaceful enough," Catherine observed as they watched from the shelter of a stand of trees. "Maybe," Beau replied, his natural caution still evident. "Let me approach first. If anything seems wrong, I'll signal you to run. And leave you again? I don't think so." Catherine's tone brooked no argument. "We do this together." After a moment, Beau nodded. "Together then, but stay behind me." They approached the homestead openly, not wanting to appear threatening. Smoke curled from the cabin's chimney and a dog barked at their approach. The door opened and an elderly man emerged, rifle in hand. "That's far enough," he called. "State your business." Beau raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Name's Beau Donovan. This is Mrs. Catherine Hudson. We're in trouble and could use some help." The old man squinted at them suspiciously. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where men with guns are chasing us," Beau replied honestly. "But our quarrel's not with you, and we don't want to bring danger to your door. Just need to borrow horses to reach Laramie. We can pay." The man studied them for a long moment, then lowered his rifle slightly. "You running from the law?" "No, sir," Catherine stepped forward. "Running from a man who thinks he is the law, Richard Reynolds." At the name, the old man's expression changed. "Reynolds, eh? That bastard tried to run me off my land last year, claimed my water rights belonged to him." He spat on the ground. "Come on in, then. Name's Harker, Ezra Harker." Inside the cabin, they were introduced to Mrs. Harker, a tough-looking woman with kind eyes who immediately set about preparing food for them. As they ate, Catherine and Beau told their story: Thomas's death, the water rights document, Reynolds's escalating threats, and their flight toward Cheyenne. "Reynolds has been squeezing folks all over the county," Harker confirmed. "Got the sheriff in his pocket and most of the town council too. Few of us who have stood against him have paid for it one way or another." "Has he killed before?" Beau asked. Harker and his wife exchanged glances. "Can't prove it," the old man said finally. "But the Wilsons' boy who spoke up at a town meeting last year was found dead a week later. Hunting accident, they called it." "Just like my husband's riding accident," Catherine said bitterly. "Man's a devil, Mrs. Harker declared, pouring more coffee. "But you're safe here for tonight. Got a loft where you can sleep, and we can spare 2 horses in the morning." "We can pay you for them," Beau offered, reaching for his wallet. Harker waved him off. "Keep your money. Seeing Reynolds get what's coming to him will be payment enough." That night, Catherine and Beau settled into the Harkers' loft, grateful for the shelter and unexpected allies. A makeshift bed of clean straw and quilts had been prepared for them, with a curtain strung across for privacy. "Try to get some sleep," Beau said, checking his revolver one last time before setting it within easy reach. "We'll leave before dawn." Catherine nodded, exhaustion weighing heavily on her, yet as she lay down, her mind continued to race. "Beau," she said softly, "do you think we'll make it?" He was silent for a moment. "Yes," he finally replied. "We've come too far to fail now, and afterward—" She hesitated. "Did you mean what you said, about staying in Timber Creek in the darkness?" She heard him shift closer. "I meant it, Catherine, if you'll have me." "What would that look like, you and me?" His hand found hers in the darkness. "However you want it to look, partners in the store, friends." He paused. "More than friends, if that's what you want too." Catherine thought about Thomas, about the life they'd built together. She would always love him, always honor his memory, but he was gone and she was still here, still alive. And for the first time since his death, she found herself wanting a future that included more than just memories. "I don't want to forget him," she whispered. "I wouldn't ask you to," Beau replied, his voice gentle. "The people we've loved become part of us. They shape who we are." Tears welled in Catherine's eyes. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not just of Reynolds, but of feeling this way again, of losing someone again." "I know." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "Life doesn't come with guarantees, Catherine. All we can do is make the most of the time we're given." She turned to face him in the darkness. "The widow said, 'I don't want to forget,'" she whispered. Beau's voice was equally soft as he completed the thought. The cowboy smiled, "Then I'll remember with you." Their lips found each other in the darkness, the kiss deepening with a hunger that surprised them both. Catherine felt something awakening within her that had been dormant since Thomas's death. Desire, yes, but also hope. Hope for a future she hadn't dared imagine. When they finally broke apart, Beau's breathing was ragged. "Catherine," he whispered, "I want you to be sure." "I am," she replied, drawing him closer. "I want this, I want you." In the quiet of the Harkers' loft, they came together as lovers, their bodies expressing what words could not fully capture: need, comfort, passion, and the promise of a future together. Afterward, Catherine lay in Beau's arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I never expected this," she murmured, "when you walked into my store that day." "Nor did I," he admitted, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I was just passing through. Looking for work, not." He paused. "Not what?" "Not looking to fall in love." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Catherine raised herself on one elbow to look at him, though his features were barely visible in the darkness. "Is that what this is? Love?" "For me it is," Beau replied simply. "Never felt this way before, like I found something I didn't even know I was searching for." Catherine's heart swelled. "I loved Thomas," she said softly, "truly loved him, but this, with you, it's different, not less, just different," Beau supplied. "I understand. I think I'm falling in love with you too, Beau Donovan." The admission felt both terrifying and right, "and it scares me half to death." He chuckled softly, pulling her closer. "We'll be scared together then." They fell asleep in each other's arms, finding peace despite the dangers that awaited them the next day. Dawn came too quickly. The Harkers had breakfast waiting and 2 horses saddled in the yard. Ezra provided them with a rough map to Laramie, indicating a route that avoided the main trails. "Should get you there by nightfall if you push hard," he said as they prepared to depart. "Judge Parker's a good man, he'll listen." "Thank you," Catherine said, clasping Mrs. Harker's hands, "for everything. You just make sure that bastard Reynolds gets what's coming to him," the older woman replied fiercely. They rode out as the sun crested the eastern hills, following Harker's suggested route south toward Laramie. The day was clear, the horses fresh, and for the first time since fleeing Timber Creek, Catherine felt hope rising within her. "If we reach Judge Parker," she said as they rode side by side, "what then?" "He can issue warrants for Reynolds' arrest based on the water rights document and our testimony," Beau replied. "Send federal marshals to bring him in." "Will that be enough? Reynolds has money, influence." "Maybe not, but it's a start." Beau's expression was determined. "And I have some connections of my own. Friends from my ranger days who have moved into federal law enforcement." They rode steadily throughout the morning, keeping to the less traveled paths through the hills. By midday, they could see the distant smoke of Laramie on the horizon, still hours away but a welcome sight nonetheless. As they stopped to rest the horses by a small stream, Beau's demeanor suddenly changed. He stiffened, scanning the surrounding terrain with narrowed eyes. "What is it?" Catherine asked, instantly alert. "Dust cloud," he replied tersely, pointing west. "Riders moving fast." Catherine felt her heart sink. "Reynolds's men, most likely. They must have picked up our trail at the Harkers." "How we were so careful. Doesn't matter now, we need to move." Beau helped her mount quickly. "If we can reach that line of trees ahead, we might be able to lose them in the broken country beyond." They rode hard, pushing their horses to their limits. The dust cloud grew larger, confirming Beau's suspicion that they were being pursued. As they reached the tree line, a shot rang out, far behind them but close enough to hear the bullet whine past. "They're within range," Beau said grimly. "Keep going, I'll try to slow them down." "No," Catherine protested. "We stay together, remember?" "Catherine, listen to me." His eyes were intense. I can buy you time to reach Laramie, get to Judge Parker, show him the document, and what about you? I'll catch up if I can. The grim set of his jaw told her he didn't believe it likely. No, she repeated firmly, I won't leave you to die for me. Another shot, closer this time. Beau cursed under his breath. We don't have time to argue. Then don't argue, Catherine replied. We ride together or not at all. For a moment she thought he would insist, then his expression softened. Together then, but we need to find defensible ground. We can't outrun them forever. They pressed on through the trees, emerging into a landscape of tumbled boulders and deep ravines. Beau led them to a rocky outcropping that offered some protection, a natural fortress with clear lines of sight in all directions. We make our stand here, he said as they dismounted. Send the horses on, might draw some of them away. Catherine nodded, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. They slapped the horses' rumps, sending them galloping southward, then took positions among the rocks, weapons ready. The riders appeared at the tree line minutes later, 6 men, Reynolds himself among them, distinctive in his fine coat and hat. They paused, clearly spotting the riderless horses in the distance. Split up, Reynolds ordered, his voice carrying in the clear air. Johnson, Taylor, follow those horses. The rest with me, they're here somewhere. Beau and Catherine exchanged glances as the group separated. 2 riders headed after the horses, while Reynolds and 3 others began searching the rocky terrain, spreading out to cover more ground. 4 against 2, Beau murmured. Not great odds. But we have the high ground, Catherine replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. That we do. He checked his revolver one last time. When they get within range, I'll take the one on the left. You keep Reynolds in your sights. Don't shoot unless you have to, but if it comes to it. I understand. Her hands were steady on Thomas's revolver despite her racing heart. The riders approached cautiously, clearly aware they could be riding into an ambush. They were within 50 yards when Beau raised his weapon. That's close enough, he called out. Next man who advances gets a bullet. The riders halted abruptly. Reynolds peered up at their position, his face contorted with anger when he spotted Catherine beside Beau. Mrs. Hudson, he called. This has gone far enough. Come down and I give you my word you won't be harmed. Your word. Catherine's laugh was bitter. Like the word you gave my husband before you had him killed. Reynolds's expression darkened. You're making accusations you can't prove, madam. We have proof, she replied. The water rights document you've been so desperate to get your hands on. It's on its way to Judge Parker in Laramie as we speak. It was a bluff, but Reynolds couldn't know that. Uncertainty flickered across his face. You're lying, he said, but with less conviction. You've been with Donovan the whole time. Have I? Catherine's voice was steady. You seem very sure of our movements for a man who claims no involvement in pursuing us. Reynolds turned to his men. Search the area. They must have the document with them. As the gunmen began to move, Beau fired a warning shot that kicked up dust at the hooves of the nearest horse. I said that's close enough. The men froze, hands hovering near their weapons. Reynolds's face was a mask of fury. You're dead, Donovan, both of you. No one will find your bodies out here. You willing to die to make that happen, Reynolds? Beau's voice was cold. 'Cause that's what it'll take. A tense standoff ensued, neither side willing to back down. Catherine kept her weapon trained on Reynolds, her finger light on the trigger. One word from Beau and she would fire. The impasse was broken by the distant sound of hoofbeats, many hoofbeats, approaching fast from the south. All eyes turned to see a group of riders cresting a rise, the sun glinting off badges pinned to their chests. Federal marshals, Beau said with a grin. Looks like the cavalry's arrived. Reynolds's face drained of color. This isn't over, he snarled, wheeling his horse around. Ride. He shouted to his men, spurring his mount northward. Beau fired again, his bullet striking Reynolds's horse in the flank. The animal reared in pain, throwing its rider to the ground. The other gunmen hesitated, torn between helping their employer and saving themselves. The decision was made for them as the marshals closed in, weapons drawn. Federal marshals, the lead rider called out. Everyone drop your weapons. Reynolds's men, seeing they were outnumbered, complied reluctantly. Reynolds himself lay where he had fallen, clutching his leg, his face a mask of pain and fury. Beau and Catherine emerged from their rocky shelter, weapons lowered but still ready. The marshal in charge, a weathered man with a silver mustache, rode forward. Beau Donovan, he said, a note of surprise in his voice. Should have known you'd be in the middle of this. Marshal Crawford, Beau replied with a nod. Your timing's impeccable. Got your wire from the Harker's place this morning. Figured you might need some assistance. Crawford dismounted, approaching them. This the lady you mentioned, Mrs. Hudson? Yes, Beau said. Catherine, this is Marshal James Crawford. We served together in Texas. Crawford tipped his hat. Madam, Beau's wire said you have evidence of murder and water rights fraud. Catherine withdrew the document from inside her bodice. This proves my husband and I have senior water rights to Timber Creek. Rights that Richard Reynolds has been trying to steal, first by offering to buy our property, then by having my husband killed when he refused. Crawford examined the document carefully. This is territorial business. Judge Parker will want to see this. He glanced at Reynolds, who was being tended to by one of the marshals, and hear your testimony against this man. You have no jurisdiction here, Reynolds spat, his face pale with pain and anger. This is a local matter. Water rights disputes in the territories fall under federal jurisdiction, Crawford replied calmly, as do murder investigations when local law enforcement is compromised. He turned back to Catherine. Is there anyone who can corroborate your story, madam? The Harkers, she said. And possibly Jackson, the foreman at the Double R. He seemed uncomfortable with Reynolds's methods. Crawford nodded. We'll question them all. He gestured to his men. Get these fellows on their horses. We're taking them to Laramie. As the marshals secured the prisoners, Beau turned to Catherine. It's over, he said softly. Reynolds won't escape justice this time. Relief washed over her, so profound it made her legs weak. Beau caught her arm, steadying her. You did it, Catherine. You stood your ground. We did it, she corrected, leaning against him. I couldn't have done this alone. His arm slipped around her waist, supporting her. You're stronger than you know. Marshal Crawford approached them again. We should move out. It's still a few hours to Laramie, and we'll want to get statements from both of you while the details are fresh. They were provided with fresh horses and rode with the marshal's party toward Laramie, Reynolds and his men under heavy guard. Catherine found herself watching the man who had caused so much pain, who had taken Thomas from her, who had tried to steal her livelihood, who had forced her to flee her home. He sat slumped in his saddle, defeated, his power and influence stripped away. It didn't bring Thomas back. Nothing could do that. But there was justice in seeing Reynolds brought low, and in knowing that the truth would finally be told. In Laramie, they were taken directly to Judge Parker's chambers despite the late hour. The judge, a stern-faced man with piercing eyes, listened carefully to their story, examining the water rights document with meticulous attention to detail. This appears to be in order, he said finally. And if what you say about Sheriff Mills's involvement is true, Mrs. Hudson, we have a serious case of corruption to address. He turned to Marshal Crawford. I want statements from everyone involved. The Harkers, this Foreman Jackson, anyone who might corroborate Mrs. Hudson's account of events. Already have men riding to interview them, Your Honor, Crawford replied. Good. The judge faced Catherine again. Mrs. Hudson, I understand this has been a traumatic ordeal for you. We'll need you to remain in Laramie for a few days while we conduct our investigation, but I can arrange comfortable accommodations. Thank you, Your Honor, Catherine replied. But what about my store in Timber Creek? I've been away for days already. I'll send marshals to secure your property and inform the townspeople of the situation. He glanced at Reynolds, who was being held in an anteroom under guard. I expect there will be considerable interest in these developments. After providing detailed statements, Catherine and Beau were escorted to a small hotel near the courthouse. The marshal's office arranged for adjoining rooms, and for the first time in days, Catherine found herself alone, able to truly process everything that had happened. She sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion washing over her in waves. Thomas's death, her flight from Timber Creek, the danger they'd faced, her growing feelings for Beau, it was almost too much to comprehend. A soft knock came at the door connecting their rooms. Catherine. Beau's voice was hesitant. Are you all right? She crossed to the door and opened it. He stood there, freshly washed, his bruises still vivid but his eyes clear and concerned. I don't know, she answered honestly. It doesn't feel real yet, any of it, I know. He remained in the doorway, not presuming to enter. It will take time. Reynolds will go to prison. If there's any justice, yes. With the evidence we have and the witnesses Crawford's gathering, he'll face serious charges: murder, corruption, land fraud. Catherine nodded, relief mingling with a strange emptiness. Then it's over. This part is, Beau hesitated. Catherine, about what happened at the Harkers, what we said to each other. Did you mean it? She interrupted. About staying in Timber Creek, about us? Every word. His eyes held her steadily. But I understand if you need time, if you want to return to your life without complications. Catherine thought about the store, about the life she'd built with Thomas. It would be easier in some ways to return to that familiar routine alone. To honor Thomas's memory by continuing what they'd started together, but she thought too of the loneliness of the past 6 months, of the connection she'd found with Beau, unexpected, powerful, alive with possibilities. I don't want to forget, she said softly. Thomas, our life together, it will always be part of me. I know, Beau replied, understanding in his eyes, but I don't want to live only with memories either. She stepped closer to him. These past days with you, despite everything, they've reminded me what it feels like to be truly alive. To have a future to look forward to. Hope dawned in his expression. And is there a place for me in that future? Yes, Catherine said, reaching for his hand. If you still want it, I do. He drew her gently into his arms, more than anything. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise of healing, of new beginnings, of a life together neither had imagined just a week ago. Then I'll remember with you, Beau whispered against her lips. All of it. The pain and the joy, the past and whatever future we build. The investigation proceeded swiftly. Within days, Marshal Crawford had gathered testimony from the Harkers and, crucially, from Jackson, the Double R foreman, who confirmed overhearing Reynolds order men to deal with Thomas Hudson after the town meeting where they'd argued about water rights. Judge Parker issued indictments against Reynolds for murder, corruption, and fraud. Sheriff Mills was also charged as an accomplice, along with several of Reynolds's hired guns. The case caused a sensation throughout Wyoming territory, with newspapers as far away as Denver covering the story of the wealthy rancher brought down by a widow's determination to uncover the truth. 2 weeks after their flight from Timber Creek, Catherine and Beau returned home. Word of their approach spread quickly, and by the time they rode into town, a crowd had gathered outside the general store. Mr. Peterson was there, along with Mayor Wilson and his wife, and dozens of townspeople Catherine had served over the years. Mrs. Hudson. Mr. Peterson called, stepping forward. We've been so worried. It's good to see you all, Catherine replied, dismounting with Beau's assistance. I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly. We've heard about Reynolds, Mayor Wilson said, his expression grave. Is it true about Thomas? Yes, Catherine said. He was murdered for standing up to Reynolds, for protecting what was ours. A murmur ran through the crowd. Mrs. Wilson stepped forward, taking Catherine's hands. My dear, if we had known, none of us suspected. Reynolds fooled a lot of people, Beau said, standing supportively at Catherine's side. But he'll answer for his crimes now. And you are, sir? Mayor Wilson asked, eyeing Beau with a mixture of curiosity and respect. Beau Donovan. He extended his hand. I'll be staying in Timber Creek. Helping Mrs. Hudson with the store. Catherine felt the speculation ripple through the crowd and decided to address it directly. Mr. Donovan and I have become close during these difficult times. He risked his life to help me bring my husband's killer to justice. Mrs. Wilson's eyes widened, but her smile was genuine. Well, that's wonderful news, Catherine, truly. The crowd dispersed slowly, many stopping to welcome Catherine home and express their shock and sympathy over the revelations about Thomas's death. By the time she and Beau entered the store, Catherine was emotionally exhausted but also strangely at peace. The store was just as they'd left it, though Mr. Peterson had clearly kept things tidy in her absence. Catherine ran her hand along the familiar counter, feeling both the weight of memories and the lightness of new beginnings. Home, she said softly. Beau stood in the doorway, watching her with a tender expression. Is it still, after everything? She turned to him, seeing the uncertainty in his eyes despite his confident demeanor. This man who had faced down gunmen without flinching was now vulnerable before her, waiting to know if he truly had a place in her life. Yes, she said, crossing to take his hands. It is. But home isn't just a place, Beau. It's people, it's belonging. She looked up at him, her heart full. And I want you to belong here with me." His smile was slow and warm, reaching his eyes. "I'd like that very much, Catherine Hudson." "Good." She rose on tiptoes to kiss him lightly. "Because I have plans for us. For this store, for our future," he repeated, as if testing the words. I like the sound of that. In the months that followed, Catherine and Beau rebuilt more than just the store. With Reynolds's empire dismantled, many of the small ranchers and farmers he had squeezed began to prosper again. The town of Timber Creek experienced a revival, with the general store at its heart. Beau proved to be not only handy with repairs, but also a natural businessman. Together, they expanded the store, adding a hardware section that drew customers from miles around. Catherine found herself laughing again, planning for the future, embracing life in a way she hadn't since Thomas's death. They were married the following spring, in a simple ceremony attended by the entire town. Judge Parker himself came from Laramie to officiate, a testament to the impact their case had made throughout the territory. "Are you happy?" Beau asked as they danced at their wedding celebration, held in the town square under a canopy of stars. Catherine considered the question seriously. She thought of Thomas, of the life they'd shared, of the grief that had nearly consumed her. That grief would always be a part of her, but it no longer defined her. "Yes," she said simply. "I am happy, Beau, more than I thought possible." Again, his arms tightened around her. "I promised I'd remember with you the good and the bad, and you have." She rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. "You've helped me honor the past while building something new, something wonderful." Later that night, as they stood on the porch of their store now, Catherine looked up at the star-filled Wyoming sky. The same stars had witnessed her grief, her flight, her fight for justice. Now they witnessed her joy, her love, her second chance at happiness. "I don't want to forget," she whispered, echoing the words she'd spoken to Beau in their darkest hour. He smiled, drawing her close against the night's chill. "Then I'll remember with you," he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss that spoke of all the days and years to come. 5 years later, Catherine stood on that same porch, watching Beau teach their 3-year-old son, Thomas, to ride his first pony in the yard behind the store. Their daughter, Sarah, just 1 year old, balanced on Catherine's hip, chortling at her brother's antics. The store had prospered beyond their expectations. They'd added a second story, proper living quarters separate from the business, and even employed 2 clerks to help with the increased trade. Timber Creek itself had grown, with new families settling in the fertile valley that Catherine's water rights had helped protect from monopoly. Sometimes, late at night, Catherine would take out the water rights document that had changed everything, the paper that had cost her first husband his life and brought her second husband into her world. She would remember those desperate days on the run, the fear, the grief, the awakening of feelings she'd thought forever dormant. And always, Beau would find her, would sit beside her, would remember with her, honoring the past while celebrating their present and looking forward to their future together.